What a lovely looking crowd. So happy to be here. It's my fourth or fifth time speaking at NDC Oslo, and this time, my first time doing a talk that is not my usual comfort zone, shall we say. This is more a soft skills, a personal skills talk, and I'm far normally speaking about the technical side of things, so fingers crossed. Now, I'm going to do something a bit different. Seeing as this is different for me, I'd like you to experience something a bit different too. And I'm going to make you all, if you could, close your eyes. Stay with me on this. No one fall asleep. What I'd like you to do is imagine your ideal start to your working day. So, perhaps this is that you wake up around 7:30. You go downstairs, you see the sun rising over the town that you're living in. You might have breakfast with your child. You get them ready, you get the dog, and you walk through the park, take your kid to school. And on your way back, you grab a coffee and go and sit down at your desk, ready to start your day. Welcome back to reality. Unfortunately, it's now 7 a.m. Your alarm clock's gone off, and you've already got 28 unread emails. You're tired because you were up at 4 in the morning due to an on-call incident that had you up and you were having to work on something. Your brain is already fried. You're not really in the mode for work. Your kid's screaming at you. They have a school project that they needed to do last night, and they need some things they've got to take into school. So you jump in the car, you drop your kid at school, and then you're rushing your way into the office. You're stuck in traffic. You're not going to make it for your 9 in the morning stand-up. You get there just a few minutes late to give your update. No updates from me. You then move on to a day sat in an open plan office where you can't really be too productive, and then sit through meetings where you have to hear about your boss telling you how important it is to have the company all together in the office and how important return to office is for the company culture. This was the best image I could find of company culture. A water cooler. Who has a water cooler at home? Nobody. Only in the office. Now, okay, I may be a little bit biased here. Of course, today I'm talking about leading successful remote teams, but we're going to be touching on all aspects of building company culture and trying to make your team and your employees feel happy, feel welcome, feel loved. And the unfortunate reality is, whilst we dream of those idyllic wake-ups, starts to our day, most people, probably at some point or maybe every day, experience more like the latter. A rush, having to get things done, and it's just not the best way to start off. So, I'm Callum, and I'm going to talk to you today about leading successful remote teams. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I work with an open source CMS called Umbraco. They have a booth downstairs. You should go talk to them. They've got prizes and everything. A .NET developer by trade. And I run a consultancy out of the UK and more recently out of Australia called Bump. Hence, I'm the chief bumpster. I chose this title so that recruiters couldn't find me on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. They can still find you. I have about a decade of experience leading remote teams in various different forms. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey and my experience that's taken me from working for other software companies, leading those remote teams, to building one of my own and developing the culture that we want to get the most out of my team. So, here's a bit about my journey. In 2013, it was actually the first time I started working in a remote team. We were an office-based team in the UK, but our technical director moved abroad, and she was working remotely for us. And this was my first flavor of actually working in a remote team. 2013, before remote work was even really cool. There were some challenges, and in honesty, it didn't work. 2 years later, she moved back, and the whole company was a lot better for it. In 2015, I took on a new role at a company in London, and I was so excited about this company. It had everything that I really wanted out of a role. It had a huge amount of open source work and ability to contribute back to my community, to build things that other people would use as well. I ended up taking on the responsibility for parts of their consulting function, leading on-site consultancy with their clients. I ended up leading a team of developers across the UK and Poland building membership systems, and then later a mobile application for a medical startup. This was fantastic. This was everything I'd kind of hoped and dreamed for. And for the first 2 years, it really was like that. But after a little while, the culture started to degrade, my priorities started to shift a bit, and my love for the place started to fall down. There was a number of issues here. I mentioned they had an office in the UK and they had an office in Poland, and this was great, but it turns out over time we weren't actually very aligned, unfortunately. Instead, the Polish team would arrive at 7 in the morning, their time, and the UK team would arrive at around 10 in the morning, their time. That's 6 in the morning UK time and 10, essentially a 4-hour difference between the teams. And what we ended up with was a complete unsynchronization of everybody, where people weren't entirely clear on what the priorities were. It was very hard to arrange meetings and get in touch with people. And yeah, this just became incredibly problematic. My manager at the time, came up with a fantastic solution. We need a way of connecting these 2 remote offices. We're not 2 distinct teams. We need to work well together. And he installed a couple of these. We had these Wi-Fi controlled security-type cameras set up in each office, pointing at the bank of desks that the development team sat on. And you could go to a link, or there was a screen in each office showing the feed from the other office. And this was going to be the fantastic solution to connect our 2 teams, regardless of us being so physically far apart. Spoiler alert, didn't work that way. Not least did these things break once or twice a week. Most of the time, I was just looking at an empty bank of desks, because yet again, the team was on a sort of 4-hour difference to what we were working on in the UK. And vice versa. If they came in the morning, they would see a bank of empty desks for 4 hours as well. We had a team stand-up once a morning, and that team stand-up very quickly went from a 15-minute no updates from me, very unhelpful meeting, to being dragged out to nearly an hour because people wanted detail and we needed to be aligned. But that just meant we were wasting an hour of everyone's day, in the case of the Polish team, nearly at lunchtime, and in the case of our team, right at the very start of our day, when we sort of had that mad rush to get into the office where we weren't really feeling too productive. This led to big rifts in the team, where both on projects we couldn't really collaborate, we couldn't see eye to eye, we couldn't align, but also with my colleagues, where people didn't feel like we were all working towards a shared direction anymore. The company shifted from feeling like this lovely, idealistic place where I can do all this work that I've been hoping to do for my whole career, to more of a hamster wheel. This is the only way I can describe it. The faster you run, the faster the wheel spins, the harder it is to get off. Hopefully this is something that resonates with some people, or at least not anymore, but maybe in previous roles. It's not healthy, and it's a surefire way to burnout. And I could feel this happening to me. The passion, the spark that I had for the work I did was slowly fading. And by the middle of 2018, I went to a family gathering, and my own mother took me aside and said words that really stuck with me. "You look unwell, grey, almost dead." And that was really the first time I'd actually kind of clocked that, okay, something's going on here, something's not right. I knew I wasn't enjoying my work, but I thought maybe it was just circumstantial and it was just maybe the projects we had on. But no, everything that I'd actually started out at that company hoping to enjoy had gone, and with it, it'd taken my passion. I sat there contemplating what I wanted to do, really questioning actually whether software development was for me, whether this was something that I felt like I could still be a part of. So I quit my job. I understand that's quite a privileged and fortunate position to be able to do, and say, I'm done here, I need some space. And I took a couple of months off, really just to work out what it was I actually was interested in and cared about. I didn't know if I wanted to do development anymore. I didn't know if even open source or working in the technology space was for me. But something very interesting happened. I left in December of 2018, and within 5 days, I found myself, for the first time in maybe a year, picking up a computer and willingly deciding to work on an open source project of my own, within 5 days. Leaving that company took a massive weight off my shoulders. From, no longer having to worry about work, no longer having to worry about necessarily waking up at a certain time in the morning, I started to craft in my head what life could look like. I explored some opportunities, and I started to see this light at the end of the tunnel. I realized that I did love working in the software industry, and I did love building things and helping solve problems for different teams. Maybe I didn't enjoy so much of the culture that came from working in a bigger company with the politics and the bureaucracy. And so I decided to set out and start a consultancy of my own, and here we are today. I swore that I would never work in another software team ever again. Turns out it's quite hard to say no to work and money, and then you end up needing to hire people, and you end up running a company of your own. Shit. So now we have the same problem on our hands, but I'm also in charge of the company. This is quite a big step to take. So I then needed to work out, how was I going to do this? I said to myself, if I'm going to build a company, I'm going to take all the things I've learned from the past 7 years of working in remote teams, and I'm going to build something after my own vision, and something that actually makes me happy, and something that I can actually feel proud of going to work every day on. So I started my company, and I had to start by defining what our culture and our processes were going to look like. So this is a fairly unique position. Not many people will be able to start their own team from scratch and really make these, define exactly how your team works and how you want to work. But as the saying goes, culture eats strategy for breakfast. This is a quote by a famous management consultant, so I wouldn't necessarily, take take too much notice of this. But the idea is that if you build a strong culture, you'll have a happy, rewarded team that feels good about doing the work they do. And for me, that's exactly what led me to join the previous company in the first place, a strong culture. For me now, the challenge was about trying to keep that up and keep something that the rest of my team could feel excited by and engaged by. So I set out 4 key principles that I wanted this company to look like. And some of them were quite ambitious, and some things that I felt would require a lot of hard work, but was something that was possible because we were starting from zero. The first one here is that community matters a lot to me, and open source matters a lot to me. So much so I was like, is there a way I can do this as a job? Turns out doing open source for money is fairly difficult to do. But there's ways you can do open source contribution and still make that part of your day-to-day work and make it part of something you get paid for. So community and open source first, primarily, was a goal of mine. Everything we do should be designed to be given back in some way, should be contributing back to an open source project, or if we're building something of our own, we should build it in a way that we can decide to open source that at a later point. I think this has a huge number of benefits, and is something that's quite difficult to convince perhaps your boss of. But it empowers your team to actually get contributing to the community, empowers them to get their names out there, and eventually builds up their own personal brands. More traditional companies will see this and go, why am I paying money, paying someone's salary for them to go and build their own personal brand? How's that helping me? I need to sell consulting services. And that's very true, except it all feeds into building our reputation as a company. And this was something that I was going to be quite strong on. Our marketing strategy is effectively getting our team out there, getting our work out there, getting noticed, and then we should be able to get some recommendations, leads through that. Also, more valuable employees means, yes, they could leave and go somewhere else, but if you keep them happy and entertained and rewarded, they will give back tenfold to your company as well. So whilst this is quite an indirect way of driving success for my company, I saw this was a good thing to do. Not only did it align with my interests and benefits, but I felt like it was going to be good for the people that would work on my team as well. The second aspect was a strong focus on technical quality. Now, you're probably all here working in software teams and going, we all do that. We all care about quality, right? But there is lines in this. There's different levels of caring about quality, I think. There is, when you're working in a consulting firm and they say, yeah, that's good enough, just get it out, we need to get paid. That is perhaps where quality starts to fall down. And I've been in that position where you say, we don't have the budget to do that. I decided we were going to take a different stance on this and say, nope, everything we do, we're going to try our best to do this as well as we possibly can. Personally, I know in my heart, if I look at a project and I know under the hood that it's sort of held together with sticky tape and chewing gum, that we've not done the best thing we possibly could for that customer. And our team does not feel rewarded by the fact that they've worked on that project either. It's like a poison chalice. Don't see my name on that code base. Someone else inherits it, and they go, hang on, you're that person from this code. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be that person. So strong focus on technical quality was my next big thing. The other pillar that I'd decided was remote worked well. So where we had teams that were in the UK and Poland, that did work well. There were so many advantages to that. We could get talent in areas that we didn't maybe anticipate. We could get different viewpoints, both from experience and from geopolitical viewpoints on how things work, different skills. People coming from different sectors, maybe in the UK have worked maybe in more consulting, and in Poland they'd worked more in financial services, for example. So we got a really good blend of skills there. We were going to build a company that was remote only. So this was in 2019, before the pandemic, before remote was sort of forced on a lot of people. We were going to build a company that was completely remote and also completely, truly flexible. And what do I mean by that? A lot of companies nowadays advertise their roles as we're a remote team in the office 2 days a week. Or we're a hybrid team, but you can select like 2 days a month where you have to travel to our office. That's fine. But this is not actually truly remote and remote first. Essentially, you still have a physical office, a meeting point somewhere. We don't have a physical office. I decided we were going to build a team that had nowhere to call home. It was just the company, and we met online and we worked together online. Flexibility is an interesting one, because every job I've worked in have claimed to be flexible. I'm probably sure many of your employers do the same. But who has core hours in their flexible roles? Quick show of hands. Cool, so it's not flexible, because if you don't want to work those core hours, instead you've got to take a day off or something. To me, flexibility looks like, I worked till 4 in the morning because of some outage. I'm not coming in tomorrow. Could you tell that to your boss nowadays? Some people would say yes. Some people, probably not. You still end up having to make up that time at some other point, and you still end up paying the price. I want to get to the point where if someone says, my head is not in the work today, that's okay. And that actually, as a company, we can allow that, because you're probably not effective if you're working in a team where you've got people who don't want to be there. So we introduced a couple of policies. One of these was a true work from anywhere policy. We have no office, and we enable our team to decide where they would like to work. That could be from home. If you'd like access to a co-working space or an office of your own, that's fine. We can support that, and we will fund that. If you need equipment for your home office, absolutely fine. We will support that and fund that. The other aspect was unlimited leave. This is quite a hot topic. It's something that was trending in the Silicon Valley space for quite a few years, and has slowly made its way over to Europe, etc. Unlimited leave, what does that look like? My ambition when we set out was we will literally not give people a limit in terms of how much leave they can have. My view was, if we're going to treat people like adults, they will treat us in the same way. Now, that might have been a little naive. We'll talk about some of the learnings from this in a moment. And the final one, and this is possibly the biggest and most the biggest cultural shift from other companies I've worked in, is we wanted minimal ceremony. I mentioned previous companies where we would spend an hour doing a stand-up. We all know that's not effective, right? But when you combine that with the fact that we have a sprint planning meeting that lasts 2 hours, we have a sprint wash-up meeting that also lasts 2 hours, we have retrospectives that last several hours, suddenly there's a lot of time that's going on ceremony. And I don't mean that these things are bad to do, but we just need to think about where our time's going. Being a technically driven company and a company that predominantly their goal is to deliver on software and deliver value for our customers, I didn't think that these things were actually going to deliver value, and they didn't bring me joy either. So I set out to abolish stand-ups, timesheets, meetings, any form of real hierarchy, and especially no one is doing overtime. Don't want any on-call, I don't want any out of hours, I don't want anything. Now, this might tread on a few toes, but I'll explain each one of these to you. So stand-ups. Our conclusion was the updates that are coming from stand-ups don't generally bring wider value to the wider team. You may be talking with your... I'll keep going. You may be talking with your team that's working on your immediate project, but if you're in a company like ours where we're working on several projects at any given time, maybe that's information about projects that you don't really care about, and you have to sit there and listen to other people talk about it. It's good for context and good for knowledge sharing, but the reality is you tune out, and you could be doing something more effective with your time. Similar for meetings. There's no point sitting in a meeting if you don't feel you're adding anything or there's any value in you being there. And so we decided that meetings would be kept very, very short, 25 minutes if possible. 25, so it's not a full 30. You've got a 5-minute break directly after. I think this is a fairly common pattern in a lot of companies now. But meetings were on a absolute only necessary basis. Show of hands or a little cheer. Who has to fill in a timesheet in this room? Cool. This is the one that I get a lot of confused faces about. Timesheets. How does this work? So if you're working in a consulting company, generally, timesheets and what you put into your timesheet equates to billing and what you end up billing your customers, which is all well and good. But the reality of that, having worked on the client side as well, is that's not the case. Someone's going through it and going, I agreed a fixed cost with this client. So what? We burned twice the budget. I'll just make a note of that. And then we forget about it and we move on. I've equally worked in companies where somebody would come round on a Monday morning and go, your timesheet didn't add up to 38 hours last week. What were you doing? I don't know. I had a couple of meetings, a toilet break, I had a doctor's appointment that morning. Well, it needs to add up to 38. We need to be able to bill for this. I had a boss who stood up in front of the whole company and said, I can't pay my mortgage unless you fill in your timesheets. We all know the reality of that is not true. So we changed our entire billing model from the outset. We said the only unit of time we're going to track is half days. You can effectively equate this to a story point or whatever else, but it's an arbitrary unit, and we've chosen half days for a reason. If you get a 1-hour task that comes into your team, the reality is the disruption of scheduling that 1-hour piece of work is massive and is more than the 1 hour that task takes. By estimating everything in half-day chunks, we inherently build buffer into our system. So we say, no, this task is only an hour, but we're going to schedule half a day for it. We're going to assume it's half a day. It allows for pair programming, and the time is already then baked into the estimate if we need some help. It allows for code review, and it allows us to take that extra bit of time to make sure the quality we're delivering is up to scratch and is as good as possible. So we do that as our unit of billing. And now you're thinking, well, how do you report what you've done? How do you bill your customers? As I said, it doesn't really matter. Most of them are probably being given a fixed cost anyway. They have a budget that we need to make this work within. But at the end of a given week or a day, depending on the project, people who've worked on that project are asked to tell us, did you spend half a day or a day on this today? Now, if you spent an hour, you say half a day. And it's entirely possible that you did 2 days worth of work in a single day, and that's absolutely fine. It's also entirely possible to do only half a day or not even a whole day's worth of work, and that's also fine. We know that people's time gets absorbed in other places. People will often ask me, okay, fine, billing aside, how do you know when something has gone over? Well, it's fairly obvious, because when a half-day task has taken 3 days, something has gone catastrophically wrong. We're monitoring our scheduling, we're checking when work goes into doing, and we know when it comes out of doing. So it's fairly easy to understand when something's gone horribly wrong. Now, I appreciate we're not then going to have that granular to the hour knowledge of why something has taken a bit longer, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if your 2-hour task took 3, I don't care. But if your 1-week task took 5 weeks, that's when I care. And that's also when it's very, very obvious, because suddenly you're working on the same thing for so many weeks. Okay, timesheet rant over. Hierarchy. We're starting small, building a small company. I've worked in companies where so often you had too many levels to go through to get approval. And equally, you had people in that middle and upper level who didn't really know what was going on the day-to-day and would throw little grenades into your project and go, What about that? Have we thought of this? Actually, I need this twice as fast. I wouldn't have done it that way. Really unhelpful. So we wanted to create a empowered team that was able to do exactly what they thought was right by the project and just make that happen. So as of right now, the structure of my company, we're less than 10 people, but it is me and the team. There is no middle management in that. It works up to a size, I appreciate, but I believe you can take that same model and scale that to teams within wider companies, and that's also fine. Finally, overtime. I've worked in companies where they'd be like, okay, guys, we have a deadline coming up. Would everyone be willing to stay on Tuesday night if we all buy you pizza? Sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Free pizza for a bunch of free work for the company. Yeah, not so good. I'm very proud in the fact that 8.5 years since we've been running this company, we've not yet ever ran a pizza night. No one has ever worked late because they were forced to. They've only ever done it if they've decided they want to work on something or because that suits their working schedule around our flexibility. There's no point in taking on out-of-hours support agreements with customers if we don't want to be servicing them. If someone doesn't want to be sat there on a Friday night with their laptop just waiting for something to happen, can't have a drink because something might go wrong, fine, that's not us. So we've decided to not sell that as an offering to our customers. I've been there, I've done it. I forgot I was on call. It was a Tuesday, so it was probably in hindsight a bad idea. I went to the pub, had a load of drinks, came home, and bam, a massive website that we were supporting goes offline. I'm there trying to work out why the SQL database password's expired for 2 hours, and I shouldn't be in front of a computer. Anyway, out-of-hours support doesn't really help anyone. There's companies that do that for you. You can outsource it to them. For us, we decided not to do that. So those were my 4 pillars: open source, high technical quality, full flexibility, and a true remote team, and as minimal ceremony as possible. What we quickly realized is to do all of these things, it requires and relies on excellent, and I mean truly, truly excellent levels of communication and trust, crucially. You cannot just let people, assign someone a task, say, off you go make this thing work, go make this thing happen, and expect it to happen. You need to know when something's going wrong. You need to be told when problems occur. You need to make sure that people are aware of priorities and are all working towards the same shared goal. This was a bit of a mistake we made early on. This is sort of what our setup looks like, largely. And as I say, this is me and then a bunch of people internally. We've got some development resource, some front-end development resource, project management, DevOps type focus as well. I quite quickly realized here that there is one bottleneck to all of this scaling, and that is me, the manager. I'm a busy guy as well, and I can't possibly come to events like this in Oslo and say hello to all you lovely people and still be managing a team of this size. So we did have to make some structural changes to the team and the way things work. In my case, we've just effectively nominated a lead developer. Now, we've done this on 2 levels. We've done this at a company level. We have a lead developer who I talk to about wanting technical change and process changes enacted. This is a right-hand person for me to help things happen. But we've also done it at an individual project level. So we've actually brought some accountability and ownership to our individual customers. Each customer project has a nominated lead developer, and that lead developer is responsible for the overall technical quality, and I will come down on them like a ton of bricks if it's not right. They are responsible for making sure we understand the technical requirements that our customers have, and they may also talk to that customer. Crucially, they may not be the developer that works on the work, though. So this needs to be someone who is not actually in the day-to-day work on the project. They probably have their own project they're working on. We felt this was a good setup. It allows for knowledge sharing and forces good communication between different parts of the team, so that if any one person is out for whatever reason or is off, there's someone else that knows something and is able to answer those questions. Okay, slightly unorthodox, but what are the results? Well, reputation for our company now makes up around 80% of our sales. So our marketing strategy is entirely based on talking to people about the work we do and doing things in public wherever possible. Also, the average tenure for anybody on my team is just over 4 years, like 4.13 years or something, which for a company of our age, being nearly 8 years old or just over 8 years old, is pretty good because the first 4 of those years was basically just me and a couple of freelancers. We're really encouraging people to stay with the company, and I think overall people are quite happy. Industry average, at least in the UK, is around 18 months. So we are significantly ahead of industry average in that case. But we've learned a whole bunch from doing this as well. So we're a heavily technically driven team. And I was doing a one-to-one with someone a few years back, and they turned to me and said, I'd quite like to do some easy work because this is quite draining. And I hadn't really clocked that. My brain is very much geared towards, I want to solve big technical problems. But I'm not everybody, and I need to appreciate and understand that my team works differently, thinks differently to me, and that's perfectly okay. People need variety. And the ways that you keep people engaged is by giving them this variety. So we actually started going out and finding some work that was a bit easier, not some of these huge, big technical challenges. We've got an internal backlog of tasks that we work through when someone wants something a little bit different, just as some ways to, keep things lighter. Now, that's not to say this works for everyone. Some people want to be solving those big problems all the time. Some people like to be that sort of superhero developer. They come in, they fix the problem, and then they leave and go off and do God knows what. That's also fine. There's a place for all of these players in any team. But identify who they are, identify people's preferred way of working, and try and schedule work around what suits them best. Another big problem we found was, despite all the things we tried to do to put in place to make sure you had a lead developer working on your project or overseeing your project, and you had a small team working on that project, we eventually found very clear silos of knowledge and also of just work in general being done, where the same tasks for the same customers would go to the same people again and again and again because that's what they were familiar with, and they knew that, and it was the easiest path. So someone doing scheduling would just say, oh, do that. Or when we're up against it and we're really busy, we'd say, this is the easiest thing to do. And it was a big conscious effort we had to make to say, we are no longer going to do that. We need to identify these silos, these areas of resistance quickly and break them down as soon as we possibly can. You're now on a ban. You're not working on this project for the next 3 months whilst we get the rest of the team up to speed. Sounds harsh, but it's the reality. I have to go and walk back my no ceremony point slightly because there is value in ceremony. And I learned this the hard way. I found very quickly my team was going in the direction that previous company had been in as well. People don't know our shared goal and focus, and I was saying, but it's obvious, it's clear, I've been saying it, but I've been saying it in the wrong circles. So whilst we didn't have a daily stand-up, individual project teams would catch up when they wanted, and whilst I did have regular catch-ups with each individual person on that team, we brought back 2 things. The first is a formal one-to-one process with me as the manager and with people on the team. It's very easy to forget formal one-to-ones when you are busy, but it's also really important. And to use those as an opportunity to talk not actually about work necessarily, but about how you're doing on a more personal level. I realized every single person on my team I spoke to several times a week, but it was always about some problem we were trying to solve. It was never about, how's life? How's your partner? How's the dog doing? None of those things. We've reinstated that, a monthly one-to-one process. We're not doing similar, goal sectoring, smart objectives, etc. We're not doing that because for a team of our size, it doesn't really make much sense. But we are nominating people, individual roles, in addition to those, lead developer type things, people being given ownership over problems to go and solve. And we use those one-to-ones as a way of reviewing. The other point that we've added as far as ceremony goes is 1 mandatory meeting a week, and it's the only mandatory meeting we have. My view was that a 9 a.m. stand-up every morning is not in line with having a truly flexible working culture, because it doesn't make sense. It's not flexible if you've got to be there at 9 o'clock. So we have true flexible working 4 days a week. On a Monday morning at 9 a.m., we have a 1-hour company all-hands meeting. And in that meeting, we hear from various different aspects of the company, from the sales and business development side, from the delivery side, and also we just talk about bullshit as well. You need 15 minutes a week to just talk about bullshit. What did you do at the weekend? What was the conversation we had the other day? I don't know. Someone doesn't like cats in their garden, and we had a discussion about how you get rid of cats from your garden. Like, it's really simple and silly, but we actually missed that. And without having that, we found that as a team, we weren't really so aligned. So we brought that back in. Once a week on a Monday, 9 a.m., it's mandatory. No excuses not to be there, please. The thing I've not mentioned is we do, on top of this, aim to have, we've said quarterly as our goal, but in-person, face-to-face meetups with our teams. And instead of using those as a way of sitting down in an office and talking about work or having a client meeting, we just go and do something. We did an escape room game a few weeks back. We've done pizza making in the past. We generally try and travel places, so we've had people go to, I don't know, where did we go? Amsterdam one time. We get people together so that we're bonding on a more personal level, and that's not something you really necessarily get out of your day-to-day work, even in most companies. So we're quite happy with that. That's about the extent of the ceremony and process I think we would be putting in place. I don't think it makes much sense to have more beyond that for a team of our size. As we grow, that will need to change, but perhaps I like to think that individual teams can still be shielded from overall bigger process, that you can find what works for you and you can do something as minimal as possible. Flexibility. This is a fun one. This bit me 2 weeks back. Flexibility is a two-way street. It's lovely me standing up here and saying we're really flexible, we give our team full control over the hours that they work, etc. There was an incident a couple of weeks back where somebody decided they were going to be off that afternoon and hadn't told anyone. Now, that's not a problem. The policy says that's allowed. We say that's allowed. But something had been scheduled on that particular person for that afternoon, a launch of a project that needed to happen that day. And they said, oh, I'm off. And only gave us about an hour's notice, and we had to go and fix this. They said, well, if this was important, it should have been in my calendar. And I was like, yeah, that's a fair point. Your appointment's not in the calendar either. And everyone in the team has ended up sort of establishing the pattern that they work within. And whilst it's not a formal thing, no one's saying, I work 10 till 6 every day, it's sort of become known amongst the company that, oh, this person works these hours roughly. And so it's been kind of a given that it would be safe to schedule something at that time. But when there's an exception or change to that, you kind of need to tell people. So it works both ways. If you want flexibility, that's fine. We'll give you it, but you just need to tell us when things are different. I've got some tips in a minute for how we communicate those things. Unlimited leave is a myth. It's a complete myth. The first year we had this implemented, my team took the bare minimum holiday that they were required to take, and only because I went and forced people to do so. You've not taken enough holiday, we'll break the law if we don't give you some more time off. We closed for 2 weeks over Christmas, so that's all good. Yeah, unlimited leave's a myth. My hope with this was that people, if we gave people unlimited leave, they would take much more and you'd feel much more enriched in your life. You'd be able to spend more time with kids. You wouldn't worry about taking school holidays off. I'm saying this in a room full of Norwegians where the country shuts down in the summer, but in some parts of Europe, that's unfortunately not the case. So we've actually changed our policy slightly. We still have an unlimited leave policy, but people felt uncomfortable about knowing what's taking the piss. How much can I actually take? So we've changed it. So we have a minimum leave policy, which is the minimum we are legally required to give you. We then have a recommended leave policy, which is 175% of your minimum. So gives you a significant amount of leave. In the UK, it works out as nearly double the average for any employer. And then beyond that, it's still unlimited. It just requires a conversation. And that conversation's really there to reassure the person requesting the leave that actually this is fine for them to do and that they've thought this through and that this is, this is not a big disaster. People feel guilty for it. It's fine. If you've got a reason to take the leave, take the leave. So it's purely building a bit more structure around this. So whilst we have unlimited leave, I've started putting it in quotes, unlimited with different thresholds that you need to reach. My final point here, open source. What a lovely idea that we could do this in our day-to-day work, right? It's great, but it takes time, and time in consulting is money. So you need to treat this as seriously as any other project, any other client, any other work stream in your company for it to actually be taken seriously. It's the famous saying that, you go and look at a builder's house and it's going to be a mess. It's probably the same. Your personal website is probably a mess. It's not something that you're going to be keeping up to date. Ours is certainly not in a good place. So if you're going to do open source in your company, treat it seriously, give it an owner internally, schedule it like regular projects. If a bug comes in on one of your open source projects, put it as a ticket in your ticket management system and actually treat it like any other request. Okay, so I briefly mentioned at the start that we are a remote team, and so far I've talked about the UK a lot. Well, around 2 years ago, I decided that I was going to move to Australia. I'm also incredibly aware of the irony of me flying 10,000 miles here to talk to you about leading remote teams. That's certainly not lost on me. About 2 years ago, I decided to move to Australia. This was both a personal goal and also a strategic goal. It's something that, as a company, we saw a lot of opportunity there. For me, I wanted a change of lifestyle, a change of pace. I moved in December last year. It took a whole 18 months for us to get to the point where we felt comfortable enough where I could say, okay, I'm now actually ready to move. We put a lot of process and a lot of changes in place to make this happen. Interestingly, I wish we'd done it sooner, because running a remote team where everyone was still based physically in the same time zone actually meant that we weren't really operating like a remote team at all. We were just running slightly asynchronously of each other. We're now forced by physical time zones and distance to actually collaborate a lot better. Communication is tenfold better internally since this move, and documentation and all those sorts of things has happened so much better. It's completely eliminated / helped identify the areas where we had tight dependencies on any one individual, usually myself, to say, actually, we need to work out how we're going to break this up. So having the team split across these time zones has been great. And we've started growing our team in Australia as well. There's 2 of us in Australia now, so we're spread out a bit. And the team in the UK regularly, maybe travel and decide to work whilst they're traveling. And so at any given time, I think the largest spread of time zones we've ever had has been about 18 hours, which is really quite scary. And if you're leading a team like this, you might be wondering, well, how does that work? There's only one word I can tell you, and it's compromise. Everyone's in this together. Everyone has got to try and work towards that same goal and the same result. We have our Monday morning mandatory 9 a.m. call, and unfortunately for me in Australia, that means it's 8 a.m. I think 8 p.m. Sorry, currently. It's a little bit later, but that's okay. It's a small sacrifice that I've got to make sure that the team's aligned. Equally, for some other people, that might be a little bit earlier, or it could be if you're in an Eastern European time zone, sort of middle of your day, lunchtime. It might not be a convenient time, but everyone needs to work together to make that work. Similarly, when it comes to meetings or, okay, we need to launch this thing, we just make it work. We compromise. My colleague, who's also in Australia, he starts work a little bit later on a Monday because he can, and he really enjoys that. He goes to a Muay Thai class on a Monday morning, and he can actually start his week off the way he wants to, and then he does his call at the end of the day. It works well. If you embrace it properly, this can actually make quite a big difference to your working setup. Okay, enough ranting about culture and why it's important. Being able to start from scratch meant we could choose our tools and systems properly from day one, and that was really enlightening for us. We've gone with a fairly standard tech stack for our internal tools, so we use Google Workspace for our documents, for Meet, the calling system. We've tried every single video conferencing system, from Zoom to Teams to one that used to be called a peer-in, all of them. We found that Google Meet just works the best. It's frictionless, and we already pay for it, so it doesn't really matter. We do everything on Google Workspace. We use GitHub for our code. We use Trello, or used Trello, for our project management, and we use Slack for our day-to-day communication. Hopefully this is somewhat visible. This is a couple of snippets from Slack around how we're actually managing our Slack workspace. So if you can see on the very top left-hand corner there, you've got a group of channels. We have channels for given purposes. We have an announcements channel, a community channel, devs, emergencies, estimations, general, a leads channel, open source, random, sales, uptime. Some of these are automated, a couple of them to call out. The announcements channel is a read-only channel. No one in the team can post to it except nominated people. We actually use this as a place to celebrate things that are going on in the company. And I don't think this is something that happens anywhere near enough in most companies. Give your employees a pat on the back when they do something right. Tell your team that they've been fucking awesome this week. That happens in the announcements channel, alongside some other things. We've got a new starter, etc. Community is just rambling about community stuff. We've got team-specific channels. Our random channel is for memes and GIFs and sometimes slightly questionably not safe for work content that probably shouldn't be in there. But yeah, these are our fun channels. And then below that, you'll see we've got a sort of like a naming convention that we follow for our channels, where everything is prefixed. So we have 3 prefixes that we use internally. They are internal dash something. They are project dash something and client dash something. And this hopefully gives you a pretty good idea of what they're for. Internal is for internal projects, internal things that we want to work on. Project is an ongoing project, perhaps a customer, and it's a place for us to discuss things internally. That is our central hub for collaborating and sharing information. You can see the screenshot up the very top side there. That is the top bar in Slack that we use as our way of communicating certain bits of key info and making it easy to find. First and foremost, next to the channel name, you will see who the lead developer on that project is. And you can click into that and you can reach them straight away. Very simple. We then have a few folders of different links and resources. In our case, we have a bookmarks folder, and that takes you to the GitHub repository, or repositories for those projects, and to the ClickUp workspace. ClickUp is our project management tool that we use now instead of Trello. We have a spec folder. That folder might include links to various functional specification documents, if one exists, to designs or wireframes or any architectural diagrams that we've produced. That lives in the spec folder. And then URLs is just quick links to key environments or things that you might need to know. This has become our central place for sending someone. So if someone doesn't have information, they know that they can go to the Slack channel for that project, one should exist, and they will then find references there, or the name of the person to go and shout at when the reference isn't there in the lead developer. Finally, we use Slack's huddles feature quite a lot as a great way of both collaborating and just talking and doing that water cooler chat that you get in an office that you don't really get when you're working as a remote team. So in this case, one of my colleagues posted in the random channel, I'm losing my mind today. If anyone wants to chat, we can huddle. Also, can we talk about community, like call for papers, things we should be submitting to? That was one of his goals that was set in his one-to-one, saying, could you help rally the company into submitting to more conferences? And then a little huddle happened. This is a really nice, quite organic way of saying, I'm not getting anywhere with this. Maybe people just want to have a chat. Or you say, hey, team in the devs channel, I need some help with a problem. Who can jump on a call and help me out? Or you say, let's have a catch up or do some planning with my project team using huddles. We feel this works quite well. Our time zone span is about 18 hours now, and that's meant that we've had to make some decisions as a team around the way we work and communicate. We've made the decision that communication at any time of day is okay. I know a lot of people like to say, don't message me out of hours, etc. That's fine, but it doesn't work when you've got a truly distributed team. We also didn't want the team to feel pressured to respond at any time that doesn't suit them. So instead, what we've done is we've encouraged everyone in the team to say, you can message anybody at any time whenever it suits you. However, they do not have to reply until they decide it's relevant or right to do so. In Google, in the calendar, and I know Outlook and other platforms let you do this as well, you're able to set your working hours. And that then manifests itself when someone sends you a calendar invite as saying, this is outside of so-and-so's working hours. You can set those differently per day. You can even vary it per, so it's not on a schedule. Like, on this given day, I'm actually only going to work these hours instead. And it just makes it really transparent and obvious. So there's no blaming someone when someone puts a calendar invite over your planned appointment or something, because it's not in the calendar. Use the calendar. Similarly, Slack has a feature where you can say, don't notify me outside of these hours, and we've encouraged the rest of the team to just use various notification blocking features in iOS and Android to control the notifications you get out of hours too. There is absolutely no obligation to reply to anything outside of time. We tried for a while saying, don't send messages at this time. You can schedule emails, you can schedule messages instead. But the reality is, you forget. and stuff doesn't happen. So we've just said, with this spread, it's okay, it's fine, you don't need to be connected 24/7, just decide when you want to be connected. Slack's got this great feature as well called VIPs. A bit like in your phone, you can have preferred contacts where they can break through the notification system. So I've got a few of those set up for important things. But yeah, limiting notifications, it's completely up to individuals. All right, let's talk about mentorship, because in a remote team, mentorship's actually very difficult. When I've been working in an office, it's very obvious. You can turn to one of your mentees and you can see them sat at their desk, head in their hands, struggling. And in short, in lieu of putting cameras in everyone's homes and pointed at their desks, I can't see when my team is struggling. That's really tricky to do. So we need to find a good way of mentoring people in a remote setting. I think that starts from the minute you actually interview someone. You've got to choose the right person. This might upset a few people, but remote work is not meant for everybody. It does not work for everybody, and that's perfectly okay. So we start from our onboarding process. When we onboard new employees, we do 3 days worth of onboarding, and you're like, oh my God, 3 days, that sounds awful. Firstly, it's 3 half days, so you get a nice, easy start. Secondly, one of those days includes a team lunch and is nothing to do with work at all. So day 1, it's a sit down, we talk through company processes, policies, the systems, get you set up on your laptop, get things up and running. Day 2, if you're a developer or if you're like a client services person, we're onboarding you onto your individual projects, giving you as much technical info as we possibly can about those. We've got documentation. It's sort of walking through why we've done things the way we've done things, and yeah, just explaining how what you're going to work on works. Might be getting some repositories running locally on your dev machine. And then the final day, as I say, it's just a social day. Team lunch, go have some drinks. My team did one of these recently, and I got sent the bill afterwards. I was like, you didn't order anywhere near enough food. You didn't have, it's fine. Like, go and get to know your colleagues. This is really about bonding as people, because that's really important when you're remote. You still need to know people in some way. So we try and get the team together as much as possible. One-on-one mentoring is possibly the most effective and important way when you're remote, mostly because people need to know who to turn to. And in an office, it's very clear who the inherent expert on something is, but that's not very easily translated when you're a remote team. So nominating a buddy or someone that someone should go talk to is key. The other aspect is this lead developer role that we've highlighted on individual projects. That is the person you go and talk to. So there's a lot of signposting to tell you what's, where to go to find answers. However, I've got a horror story from this. We hired a developer, and they were very good. They were known in the community. They did some good work. However, their internet connection was the worst possible internet connection I've ever experienced in the world. So you end up with, the Google little jumping dinosaur game all the time, and they were not able to effectively join a call and be walked through a problem. They'd say, oh, I've got a problem with my code. Could someone jump on a call and help? And we'd try, and just absolutely impossible. So we started to rule out, what could this be like? We've got to make this work somehow. They had their front garden dug up so they could have a new ultra-fast fiber line put in. Still broken. We're like, what on earth's going on? It must be the laptop. Fine, bin the laptop, we'll get a brand new one. Laptop comes in, same problem. We're like, what is this? After, it must have been over a year of diagnosis, we found, and you're all going to go home and check this now, if you've got a Dell XPS laptop, they ship a bunch of firmware that does bandwidth prioritization. And when you're on a phone call and debugging a database that's connected to something in Azure or something like that, and maybe you're into a remote desktop connection that's looking at a server, it just throttles your connection down to half a meg, and it makes calls impossible. So turn that off, and suddenly, look at that, we can now have calls and we can help this person. But that meant we'd wasted a year of our time trying to help this person get up to speed. They were a bit more junior, and it just was incredibly frustrating experience for everybody involved. I hate to think how much impact that's actually had on this person's overall career, perhaps confidence in their ability. It was not their fault. It was the tools and it took us a year to work it out. So technology can absolutely be a big barrier to remote working. It's something crucial to understand. Pair programming is an obvious one, and it helps with knowledge sharing and context, but ultimately is not the golden solution. We like pair programming as an option for where something might be quite technically involved and you might require some guidance, but having someone to sit there and work with is really handy. So yeah, we use pair programming for that. Often, or sometimes, in lieu of things like a code review. Code reviews are great, but code reviews can become or feel a bit like an attack. When you raise a pull request and your pull request gets 25 comments saying, change this isn't right, don't do this, it doesn't reflect too well on people. And ultimately, you end up feeling quite disheartened about your work. It's not about that. We're just trying to do the right thing for the team and set our goals properly. But general rule, aim for no more than 3 comments on a pull request. If there's more than 3 comments required, jump on a call. Just say, hey, let's go talk this through. Don't nitpick, it's fine. If there's bigger problems than like you've used tabs instead of spaces or whatever, if we're not doing formatting and linting of stuff, that's fine. Like focus on those, don't nitpick things. GitHub, we use GitHub, has a fantastic code suggestion tool when you're reviewing pull requests. I know other platforms do too. Really helpful. Rather than just telling someone this is wrong, give them an example of how this might work, or at least some pseudocode to say, I would have approached it in this way instead. Include links and references to your documentation, internal notes, any discussions you've had to say, we've discussed that as a team, we would rather follow this approach. Having worked in companies with teams spread all across the world where people have vast experience, some in financial services, you say, okay, we need a new contact form added to a website. And you get a lovely, full TDD, bulletproof contact form solution that comes back. And you're like, oh, there's already a form builder in the site. It just needed adding to a page. Like, really quite simple. But people like to over-engineer things, and you can catch that easily by agreeing your approach up front, documenting these technical approaches and the decisions you've made as a team, and actually having these, in some central place that you can refer back to. I said at the start, remote work is really not for everyone. And unfortunately, the biggest lesson I've learned from a lot of onboarding more junior people, for example, over the years, has been, if it's not working out at the start, it's probably not going to work out ever. There's some people who are right for remote work and others who aren't. One example, someone who we hired, a junior developer, fully self-taught. We were having an interview. I said, we work with these technologies. And he goes, awesome, I've got a book on that I've been reading, presents the book. If you've got someone who is a self-starter, who's able to go and find these answers themselves quickly, then they will do fantastically working in a remote setup. If it's someone who's going to require a lot more hand-holding, they're going to be so much better off in a team where you can sit with them and you can explain, this is how we do things, and help work with them. It's just difficult to do that remotely. And for your sake and their sake, everyone would be better off if they were to go and work probably in another company, unfortunately. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'll wrap up with some final thoughts on health and well-being. Now, I'm going to put a massive disclaimer before I talk about this, because firstly, this is a sensitive topic. I appreciate that. If you don't want to talk about certain mental health aspects, then you're more than welcome to leave now. I'm certainly not going to be offended. I'm also very obviously not a trained professional or a medic in any regard. This is just my views and my experience that I'm about to share with you. So, following COVID, I think everyone can safely say that they came out of that with some form of struggle, let's say. COVID really amplified a lot of things for a lot of people, be it ADHD, be it perhaps depression, or just burnout in general, feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, a lack of purpose, lack of direction. And this is totally to be expected. If you go on certain parts of the internet, they'll probably have some conspiracy theory about why everyone's got ADHD now. But the way I like to think of it is, the reality is, people have spent a lot more time introspecting with their own thoughts and thinking about how they work and observing themselves a lot more. And in a remote team, this is particularly prevalent. In fact, according to the Burnout Index, a report taken during COVID 2022, 62% of people in tech are burned out. And in fact, it's a little bit more than that. 69% of women, 56% of men are identifying in tech as being somewhat burned out. And of those people, 50% of them said they were within 6 months of resigning from their job. So if there's ever an argument, a business case you need for investing in mental health support for people in your team, and especially in a remote team, it's this. People are expensive to replace, and you don't want to cause unnecessary pressure on them. And if people are that close to leaving, whatever we can do to alleviate burnout or to make things like ADHD easier to live with and to manage, then we should do that. I've spoken a lot about remote work, but there's also contrary studies, just for balance, that say whilst people who work remotely are statistically more effective, in this case, 31% of remote workers are actually more engaged in their day-to-day work, they are also more susceptible by quite some margin to stress, anger issues, sadness, and loneliness. And I feel that a lot of these things can be dealt with purely through process and good management. There are organizations out there, these are of course UK-specific examples, but there's global levels of organizations that can help with this. The NHS in the UK, whilst we love to complain about it, is fantastic, and they have very good mental health services. Unfortunately, if you want an ADHD diagnosis and you're over the age of 16, good luck. If you have depression, they might see you. Exceptional Individuals is an organization in the UK designed around supporting neurodiverse people. And in an industry like tech, I would say we're probably more on the neurodiverse end than not. So this probably applies to most people. There's mental health charities like Mind, and there's also organizations like NABS, which is more creative-led for people in the creative space. Out of the back of the pandemic, 2/3, I repeat that, 2/3 of my team started identifying with ADHD qualities. That was a pretty big wake-up call for me, because I went online and read these symptoms. There's things like, impulsiveness, disorganization, or lack of or struggle with prioritization, poor time management, trouble multitasking, restlessness. Is this sounding familiar to anybody? Easily frustrated, mood swings, or having a hot temper, or being incredibly defensive about your work. I would say probably everyone in this room has felt at least one of these things at some point. For people who have ADHD, these things might be experienced on a more regular basis and a more persistent basis, which is difficult. And if you're in a team, these things are a spectrum, and you have to help manage different people who have different levels of this, or maybe have different aspects of these symptoms. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. I'll talk very quickly about self-diagnosis. This is a strong, contentious topic. Is it okay to self-diagnose yourself as having ADHD? The short answer is yes, because it will help you identify certain things you can do to help mitigate any potential impact that it has on your work. I'm not saying you should go and start self-medicating or treating yourself. Go and seek professional help for that. But if self-diagnosing is a way of saying, I identify with a lot of these qualities, and it would be helpful for me to go and try some of these techniques to see if those help, absolutely do it. As a manager, it's not my place to tell someone, I think you've got these qualities, but we can absolutely recommend them towards these charities, these support networks that will advise them and give them the best help they can. Some tips, things that I've learned in the last year of having to manage a team with 2/3 identifying with ADHD, all with completely different qualities, is if you harness this properly and embrace it and manage it properly, this is a superpower. This is absolutely a superpower, because you have different pros and cons for different people. Certain people with ADHD, if they're constantly given highly rewarding work and tasks, things that you can do a small amount of work and you feel like you've achieved a lot, this is a really big win. People with ADHD, they struggle when they don't feel like they're getting anywhere, and then their motivation is lost. Individual planning and tracking. Some people need those really, really simple, small goalposts and to feel like you're constantly hitting things, whereas others just want to be told a big end deadline and told, in 2 weeks, we need all of this done. And they'll get it done. And you don't quite know how, but it happens. Accountability is a huge one. Making sure you've got key reporting structures, so someone's actually taking ownership of making sure that all of these requirements are met and they're done on time is important. When people don't have that oversight, sometimes these ADHD qualities can mean that you're not actually focused on your delivery. Similarly with clear deadlines. And then also, if you're aware, it helps because me as a manager, I can create buffer for you, and I can say, fine, we've estimated this task as being 2.5 days. We're going to schedule 4 for you, and I'm going to tell the client it's 8. And then that way, we've got time internally to manage that, because I know how you work. You might have a day where you just don't get anything done, and that's all right. We just need to know how to manage it. It becomes a problem when it's a 2.5 day task. It gets to 2.4 days, and you say, I'm only 10% done. So good communication is really key here. Someone highlighted to me that actually our processes was hindering them from working well. So we use ClickUp, this platform. We've moved there in recent years because it provides a lot more structure that some of the other platforms don't offer. In this case, very granular statuses, so we can actually put different tasks in different buckets to say this is where it's at. It helps with that communication aspect, but it also helps with that achievement aspect, getting a little dopamine hit when you move your card into a new column. Very, very detailed filtering, so you can hide half of these if you don't care about them, or you can see all of it if you do, if that's not overwhelming to you. And most importantly, they've got this overview list that tells you everything that's on your plate right now and things that you should be focusing on today with priority order, key deadlines, etc. It really helps for accountability. Plus, it's nice and visual. The reason we've not gone with Jira or Azure DevOps is because it doesn't have some of these more fun qualities. Maybe a more interactive and visual and engaging platform like ClickUp is something that will help your team. I'm very conscious of the time and it's lunch, so I'm going to wrap up with 2 very quick slides. The manager's role in this. I like to think of myself as, whilst I would love to be involved in all the projects from a technical perspective, my goal really is about setting our focus and our shared direction and communicating that to my team, making sure we're all aligned. It's about being the team's biggest champion in all aspects. That's sharing their wins with them or with the wider business. Also, it's about eliminating resistance and shielding them from any issues that might prevent them from actually doing their best work. I'm effectively the shit umbrella. I just put a big umbrella up and guard everybody from all of that. And also ensuring well-being. That's not something that anybody teaches you. In fact, no one gets taught really to be a manager. You just get put into this position where you've suddenly got people you've got to look after, and you've got to care about their well-being, and like this is all a bit too much. But it's really, really crucial and important for being effective with your team. And finally, my key takeaways. If you take anything from this, it's these 4 points. Remote work is actually really hard. If you're going to run a remote team, that's fine, but know what you're taking on. And it's really not suited to everyone. If you're a team currently that is not fully remote, transitioning to a fully remote team may not work for all of your team. And you've got to decide if that's something you want to do. Consistent touch points are actually critical. As much as I wanted to get rid of process and ceremony, actually having these key dates, this key 1 day each week where we talk, that's really important. Maybe stand-ups work for your team. That's also absolutely fine. Culture is learned, and it starts with the leaders. So culture has to be instilled by the people who are driving the company forward, and the rest of the company need to help back that up. You need to help identify the people in your team who are the strong champions of that culture and really put them in positions where they can shine and where they are notable and visible. Building a culture remotely is incredibly tough, and sustaining that culture is even tougher. But if you put the right people in place, you'll absolutely succeed. And finally, if you can understand your different attributes and strengths and weaknesses of your team on a very granular level, talk to them, understand exactly what they need to be effective day to day. You can adapt your processes, and I truly think this can be a superpower. Anyway, I'm way over time, but thank you so much for listening. The pizza smells amazing downstairs, so I'll let you go. I'm on various social networks at these handles. I'd love to chat afterwards as well. I'm around all week. Yeah, thank you very much.